Hey everyone, today we're going to look at the next set of three puzzles from Hexagony, the Aqre puzzles. All three of these, the example and the two competition puzzles, were written by Eric Fox, and the rules for this puzzle type were also created by Eric Fox. This is one of his creations. The rules are very simple. You shade some cells so that all the shaded cells are connected, and there's never four shaded or unshaded cells in a line. And the way to determine where they go is with these room numbers. Each room contains that many shaded cells. So with this example, the easiest starting point is this one in the top left. If you were to shade this cell in the corner, then it would immediately be trapped. There would be no way to have all the shaded cells connected, so it's definitely unshaded. This can be extended to these two cells as well. As if this one were shaded, it comes here and then it's trapped, and then this one would also be immediately trapped. Now this gives us three unshaded cells in a line, so we get an immediate shaded cell, and we can then progress out, again, using connection to have this shaded cell just work its way out. So it's going to have to make its way over to this area somehow, and the only way to do that is going to be to go through the two. So for the two, we have an either or choice. It's either this pair or this pair. There is no other option. Something a little trickier to notice is that if it's this pair, then it gives us these two as well from the unshaded cells, and will also be, more importantly, it traps itself in. So once we've established that the two, to avoid being trapped, must take the bottom pair, then this shaded cell has to start connecting out. It has to link up to the two somehow. This is the only way to do it. We then have to shade this cell, or else we get trapped. Continued just connecting. Now this will have to go in both directions, as if we were to say this cell were to be unshaded, all of the rest of this is unshaded, and we would have four unshaded cells in a line. So with both being shaded, the rest of the puzzle solves itself. So the example Aqre is pretty simple. It shows the basic connectivity techniques. But there is one thing that it doesn't show that this first contest puzzle, which was worth 35 points, does show. And this is a very, very important type of deduction in an Aqre puzzle. Now, the zeros, obviously, just none of that is shaded. And we can use the same kind of argument with these twos, right? Where this is 4 in a line, and this is 4 in a line, and so there's exactly one shaded cell on each of these. We can then do the same on the maximum end. We'll use blue for this, where this 9, each of these blue lines will have 3 shaded cells. There's no way around that. Now, you might be thinking about this 16 in the center and wondering how we can do anything with that. I mean, surely it's a large number that's not very important. Well, if you think about it, each of these lines has at most 3, which means this block has at most 12. Well, 12 plus 4 is 16. Therefore, we can just adjust where the lines would be, and we would then get these steps. Alright, so with that in mind, we now have a few lines that are exactly 1. And I'm actually going to switch to edge here for blue, because I think that's going to be useful to show something else that can be used for deductions in Aqre puzzles. And that is the concept of being blocked from connecting. We know that one of these is shaded and one of these is shaded, and that means that we cannot have the shaded cells connect through there. We can do the same with right here, and we can also do the same with these markings. Now this can be a little messy, so I'm going to stick to these lines in particular and remove the exactly 1 lines from the 2s and this 9. But I want you to remember that those exist. We know there's exactly 3 here, and we know there's exactly 1 on each of those lines. We can also say that there's exactly 3 on each of these lines with the 3, but that won't be quite useful yet. So with these connecting requirements in mind, this cell must be shaded because we have this kind of invisible barrier here. And you can actually take this, we can't quite take this a step further actually, as this is an option for the 16. It does not have to be a checkerboard. However, we can say that we cannot connect through either of these spots due to this shaded block in the middle, as if we tried to connect through there, we just simply would not have enough room to place everything. And so this cell is now caged in by the 0 and these invisible borders that we've placed. So it must be unshaded. We get a shaded cell, we get a continuation, and this must continue out through the 9. Now note that this cell being unshaded does not actually give us anything in the 2 yet, but it will come in handy later. Okay, so we can get another invisible barrier right here, and that also means that we cannot have both of these two. Again, this information propagates, because if we were to shade both of these two cells, these are both unshaded, these are both shaded, and we break. We get another barrier here. Let's see, where else to go? Well, with these barriers in place, we know that at least one of these two cells must be used in order to connect out. But you'll also notice that we have this kind of almost a wall that's going to force a connection over the top of the puzzle. However, a more interesting and more useful place to look at this stage is actually the bottom left. Now, if you're wondering how the bottom left could possibly be a useful place to look, you're not alone. This was something that I was very confused at when I first saw this puzzle. This is a very difficult Aqre, I think. But we can actually state this cell cannot be unshaded, so it must be shaded, because, you know, if we carry this farther, there's no way to connect to this bottom block. We can then do a similar argument with this cell being unshaded. The minimum connection both violates the for shaded cells rule and for unshaded cells rule. And so now, we can almost... Oh wait, sorry. This cell was sitting right there. It's forced for a while. It kind of gives us this information. So again, you can kind of use... like in these low density Aqre situations, you can often force cells to be shaded in order, because they must be part of any given connecting path that exists. All right. So place this extra border. Now, if we look at this cell, we can again say that it must be shaded by that same connecting logic, because if it's not, then whatever's in this 3 will overload the 5. And that is going to give us some rippling through the 16. We still have this either or choice, but we can now look at this 2. Actually, we don't have the either or choice. We actually just have it resolved, which is going to be helpful to this lower part. In order to be connected, none of those can be shaded. Therefore, we get this resolution. This is then shaded. The 9 is now satisfied. We are merging through the 7. If we look at the connectivity on this 2, if we try to make it connect out through this cell, well, it can't connect through both, so it must go this way. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on the placed edges now, as most of them are no longer relevant to the solve. Now, again, this kind of connecting logic, if this cell is unshaded, then coming out here will result in a 4, so this one's shaded no matter what. This cell must also be shaded, again, because it would force a double shade here. In order to get to 7, we'll need here. And now we can use a bit of logic with this 3. Both of these are not shaded, so both of these must be to get to 3, and the same deduction again on the left side. Again, connectivity forces this on the 5, which is actually going to resolve the 5 and the entire bottom section of the puzzle. We must connect to the top somehow. And now, with this 8, it's not maximal. The 8 is not maximal, and I think that's an important thing to realize. We can get to 9 still, but, and here's the big but, what happens if we do go to 9? Then we've broken connectivity. There's no way to connect this left clump to this right clump. Therefore, these two cells are both shaded, as we cannot have both of these 2 and these 3 shaded simultaneously. Due to this barrier that we have, We have another forced shaded cell on the 3. Again, if it's unshaded, then we would be forcing a connection through the 2. This one is pretty useful, as it defines a lot of the flow of the puzzle. We actually resolve the 2. We now have our 4 unshaded cells. And with the 7, we now complete the 7. And that's how you solve the square Aqre puzzle from Hexagony. This one's really about connectivity, cells that must be shaded in order to get a connection, and some maximality arguments. The hexagonal Aqre, on the other hand, will have some almost mirrored deductions at the start, just from how it's constructed. This one was worth 25 points, and a lot of that is again because scanning 3 directions on hexagons instead of 2 is quite a bit harder. It's very easy to miss things. But we're going to begin by looking at this 2 in this very large region, because here are 2 lines of 4. And from having these 2 lines of 4, we can say that the rest is not shaded. Now, this is going to extend, as we can say, here's 2 more lines of 4 to get these unshaded. And no matter what, this is going to be true. We can actually do the exact same deduction with this 10 by considering unshaded cells. And we'll get the exact same group. We then get from 3 in a line these. This 2 will then get this one unshaded, as well as these 2, as this shaded cell must connect, and there must be a shaded cell on this line. Now, if we look at this 8, then we'll notice that it is an 8 in a region of size 10. So here are 2 lines of 4. Therefore, the opposite end must have 2 shaded cells. The 6 will also give us this group of 3. We then get another 8 diamond, which will then carry the deductions a little farther. This shaded cell feeds into the 6. Note that this 1 does the same thing as the 6, only with unshaded cells. But the fact that we're placing a shaded cell into this 8 instead of an unshaded cell means that this deduction does not mirror. That's a very easy mistake to make, but we'll have to remember that this section is mostly going to be maximized. And in fact, we can actually say how it's maximized. As these 2 cells allow 1 here, 3 here, 3 here. So each of these lines will contain exactly 1 unshaded cell. Alright, so if we look at this 3, we can use connectivity and the fact that a shaded cell must be in this bottom section to say this must be shaded, and this must be shaded, and so this cell is unshaded, and we do not yet know which of these is going to be the shaded cell. You can say by uniqueness that this must be true, or else there's nothing that allows it to resolve. But again, we're not going to be using uniqueness deductions in this showcase of how to solve these puzzles. I'm just pointing that out as a technique that you can use to go faster in your own competition solves, or kind of guide you for where to look. However, in this case, the correct place to look is going to be this line with these 2 shaded cells on the 8. As we know, there's 1 unshaded cell on the line, and so it must be in one of these 2 cells. Let's see. Where else is there to look? I think there's something with this 8 down here. Yes, I believe there is something. Oh, wait. Yeah, I think there is something with the 8. Oh, wait, no, there's something even cooler. If we look at this 6, and we look at this 2, if this is our choice of the shaded cell, we immediately break the 6 by getting 2 unshaded cells into it. So with that in mind, we get the 2 resolved. I think that's a pretty cool step, the kind of thing you don't really get on a square grid. Hexagonal puzzles are great. I think they're awesome. If you haven't picked that up already this far into the series, have you even been watching the series? If you haven't, go check out the rest. I mean, I think they're good. Anyway, so this 8, we know that there's going to be an unshaded cell on one of these 2 cells. And that means we know there's 1 on the rest, but we don't know where that is going to be yet. Perhaps there's something we can do by considering both of these 8s together. I mean, there actually kind of is. In that on each of these lines, there's exactly one shaded cell, or unshaded cell. As we need 3 here, and, sorry, 2 here and 4 here. But that also means that if we go the other way, there's exactly one unshaded cell on each of these lines. Now, this gives us a sort of almost Sudoku-like elimination, where if we were to say this cell is shaded, let's just arbitrarily say it's shaded, well, that eliminates those lines, and then we're left with this group of 2. And we cannot take both of these 2, and so it would be this group as the, sorry, it would be the other way. These would be the unshaded cells. However, we can actually take that a step farther and say, well, if this is unshaded, then look what we do with this 8. So this is then a shaded cell. The logic we have still holds. We get another shaded cell feeding up into the 6. And I believe the same thing holds with this corner, where if this were to be the unshaded cell, these 2 would then break. I don't remember having to do anything like this in my initial solve, so I really do wonder what I'm missing here. But this is still a very nice kind of thing to show and see what can be done with this rule set. I can definitely imagine a similar construction showing up in a square puzzle. Okay, let's clear out some of these extra lines. So now we can actually say this is not the unshaded cell, because if it is, we would immediately complete this line, make 5 in a row, and lose. So this now gives us this kind of either-or choice around this, this cell, where no matter what we do, there's 2 options. It's either this group is shaded, or this group is shaded. We can also then say this cell in the corner here, if it's shaded, then we get 4 in a row and connecting out. Man, what am I not seeing right now? I do find scanning in Aqre difficult in general. It's very easy to miss almost complete rows. And being hexagonal only makes that a little bit harder. Oh, see what I mean? Here's this group of 3, an almost complete row. And that's going to eliminate this cell, which is going to resolve that entire group. Let's clear the lines. We then get some immediate progress into the 1. Unshaded here, therefore we resolve the 2. Some almost complete lines. I believe now we can actually look at this 3 and say something about this 3. There must be a shaded cell on all of these lines that we've marked, which gives us all of our allowed shaded cells for the 3. So that gives us some unshaded cells. Now, we're going to need to connect the left half to the right half, just like with the previous one. And there's 2 channels to do that. You can either go through this top channel, which will put 2 shaded cells on a line that we know there's exactly 1, or we can go through this bottom channel, which is going to be the correct option. Note that we do not know anything about this cell at this stage. It seems likely that it will be a shaded cell. In fact, it is certain that it's a shaded cell, for if it's an unshaded cell, we strand this one here. But we still don't know about this line. Let's see. That gives us the resolution to this 3 that we predicted earlier. Let's again do a little cleanup on the lines. So each of these lines that we have drawn has exactly 1 unshaded cell, and this resolves the entire rest of the grid. But how do we actually make progress into this part? Let's see. I think the trick is going to be Yes, if we look at this line, this big line, if both of these two are shaded, then look at the propagation through these other lines. We immediately hit a contradiction with a 4 in a line. Therefore, the other end has our shaded cells, so we can get a little bit of progress that way, which gives us our unshaded cell, gives us more unshaded cells, and the final resolution, and something that could very easily be missed and go awry, is for this final pair. This is almost a 4 in a line, so that is the shaded cell, and that is the unshaded cell. So I hope that was interesting and informative, showed you how to solve the Aqre puzzles from Hexagony. Sorry about missing this line of 3 for as long as I did, but I am glad that something neat came out of it with this kind of triple deduction over here, where the unshaded cells have to be in a sort of Latin square formation, and some of the deductions that can follow from that. There's definitely potential here, but this is absolutely a difficult variant to construct. I hope that, so yeah. Until next time, thanks for watching, glad you did, and later.